Hey there, YouTubers. It's December 10th. It's about 7:30 in the morning. I like to stay connected to what's actually happening in the world. I've commented in this YouTube channel about events of the day quite a bit, right? The wars, Julian Assange, Nord Stream, all these kind of current events, and this is not an exceptional video in the sense that I'm returning to World Game, which is quite ugly, has been for a long time. So I'm taking the line that, and I'm doing this mostly just commenting on YouTube and writing some papers and stuff, that we could have a better relationship with Cuba. And what does that have to do with Palestine? Like, I worked all through, I don't remember, early 2000s, was it? I was really interested when thawing of relations was occurring. I was interested in this idea of the Ben and Jerry's ice cream factory in Havana or near Havana, and it would be an opportunity for global university students who need a summer job, share some understanding of Cuba, go to Cuba and deliver ice cream around from the factory, whatever. You get the general picture, right? And you're saying, no, you can't do that. U.S. companies are banned from doing business with Cuba, aren't they? Well, believe it or not, Ben and Jerry's, if you see on my diagram here, are part of the Unilever conglomerate, which is Anglo-Dutch, more or less. Anyway, it's European. It's not U.S. Dove bars, a lot of brands over there, right? Procter and Gamble, they're the ones who are similar to Unilever in many ways. And I used to do research on how Procter and Gamble was, trying to make sure that their embargo was not short-circuited regarding Cuba. Like, Europeans are not supposed to disobey the U.S. when they say don't trade with Cuba. But I'm thinking the United Nations, Europe, a lot of people are interested in countering what's going on in Gaza right now. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe Egypt has said no to having anybody come there, and Jordan and so on. Like, they're tired of bearing the brunt of refugee camps, which tend to be dead ends. And I'm saying if statehood means anything, if you can be a two-state solution for me means that Palestinians suddenly all have the freedom to leave if they choose. You're not going to be forced to play this role where you need your ancestral lands and you love olives so much and you need to return to your house, which has probably been bulldozed. How is that going to happen? Did the Jews get to go back to their homes after the Nazis plundered them? Like, not always do people get to go back to their homes once they're destroyed, and I'm not encouraging destroying these homes by any means. And I know they're going to be rebuilding in that area at some point. It's going to be like the Miami of the Mediterranean. And my view of what's going on is kind of enforced gentrification. But at least in my scenario, people have an opportunity to get out, to leave, to be refugees. Whereas the world seems interested in keeping Gazans in Gaza for some stupid reason that I can't figure out. Right? It's like you've got this child penned in with a mad dog, a rabid dog, and it's like everyone's like wringing their hands and throwing bananas in there for the kid, right? A little bit of humanitarian aid, but we're going to leave you in that cage while this dog rips you apart, right? I don't think that's very ethical. I think, maybe it is caving to the mad dog to get the kid out of there. It's like, oh, you're just trying to make the dog happy. But I would think it's more important to rescue humans than to pacify their attacker at first. We can talk about going back, right? And maybe a lot of Gazans choose to stay. This is not a forced displacement. This is, here's a cruise ship parked nearby. You got free passage, and we'll take you to various bases and places where we're preparing for refugees in general are always going to be an issue. So it's not like Gazans are the only people in need of resettlement. In fact, we need to always have a large population kind of in movement, right? This idea that we're all going to settle behind barbed wire fences or taller walls, all electrified surveillance, these prison camps, we each get to be in one, and then those who have privilege get to fly around, get to be jet set. That's the corporate ruling class that's using the nation states as a front, right? I certainly see that. I mean, it's obvious. And here's my line of reasoning, right? So Bucky Fuller, one of the great futurists, we can't deny it, of the 20th century, celebrated through his life, many, many awards, architectural achievements. He's the one who wrote in Grunch of Giants that the USA we have known is bankrupt and extinct. He wrote that. And then he got a Medal of Freedom right after that. So Medal of Freedom winner. See, I point this out right at my Grunch.net. The USA we have known, bankrupt and extinct, right? Therein he declares. And on the back of this book, he's described as writing something satirical and subversive, more subversive than anything since Karl Marx, I think it says on the dust jacket. It's a very important writer. Whether you agree or not isn't the point. It's like we don't all agree with Mark Twain either. His anti-imperialist rhetoric, where did that go? I mean, manifest destiny people seem to rule the roost. I can't deny it. Washington, D.C. is in the grip of the imperial-minded. I can't deny it. But still, when we're studying American history, the fact that this guy who wrote this got a Medal of Freedom from Ronald Reagan, you would think that would be part of American history, that the public schools would have the courage to tell our own story since the 1980s and how Bucky figured in and what his math was. You know, even if it's just in literature, like Edgar Allan Poe had some secret code maybe. And here's Buckminster Fuller's way of doing triangles and tetrahedrons and stuff. You've been on this channel for a while. I've gone into exhaustive detail. I don't have to repeat it all here. But the fact that it hasn't been in the curriculum up till now, since the 70s, that to me is proof that we have no real public schools. Because they're not sharing real American history, right? Medal of Freedom, mathematics, awards up the wazoo, and a positive view of the future that the Russians liked, the Chinese liked. It's like our choice to deviate away from that without even telling people they had a choice, right? It was just some higher up corporate aristocrats who said, nah, screw this Bucky stuff. We're going to go our own way. We're going to do it the way we want to do it. And where has that gotten us, right? And who in the public schools ever had the courage to show that we had a choice? See, I'm saying that we're too cowardly to be Americans anymore. That's what happened to the United States, except the brave lives on. It's kind of in a moribund state. It's like Uncle Sam is kind of 6 feet under at this point. And that's a good place to be because you can't now blame Uncle Sam for all this garbage that's going on. Blowing up Nord Stream, you know my line on that. Of course the U.S. didn't do that. We haven't had a real U.S. since '83. Because why? Because public schools are too cowardly to perpetuate our history. They won't share it. It's too scary. They've fallen under the corporate dominance, right? Corporate capture of the public school system. Too bad. Too bad. I'm not saying I'm here to save it. I'm saying Uncle Sam is dead and gone. But what are we going to do next? See, that's the question. Do we want to create something new? Do we want to, rise to the occasion? These are the questions that face serious thinkers, and then we have a lot of YouTubers who don't know any of this, right? It's sad. Sad. Even some smart ones. All right. Other thing I just figured out, you know how I don't believe in races, right? I think it's really just, um, the Bible or Genesis in particular that people are thinking of when they say Caucasian, right? Because the Caucasus are close to Mount Ararat, which is where Noah's Ark supposedly ended up, on top of that mountain. So when people talk about Caucasians, I mean, why of all the places where pale-skinned people exist did we get this word Caucasian for these pale skins? And I think it's because it's the biblical thing. They want to be close to Noah's Ark, where it ended up, because the races in Sunday school, right? Once you're outside of science and in your church, and you're getting preached to about, the history of the world through the lens of Bibles and stuff like that, then we learn about the races. That's where races are rooted. The idea of yellow, white, brown, black, that's biblical. Those were Noah's kids. Each one founded a race. At first, they all went to build the Tower of Babel together. They had groupthink issues, right? They were pathological. And God, who's always been ambivalent about this monster we call humans, didn't want to wipe them out again. He'd promised not to. And Noah was like the best he could do. So he came up with a psyop, God did, to confuse our tongues. And that created a diaspora. And finally, humans could go all around the world and figure out their promised land was a sphere. This was what we had been given by God. It took a long time to figure that out, didn't it? Anyway, thankfully, we are now in a position to grow up. That was the question Bucky had. Will we pass our final exam? And I think, a lot of us are doing pretty well, but city-states like Washington, D.C., I don't know. I'm not sure what their contribution is these days. I certainly am glad we're working around that cesspool and getting work done. All right, talk to you soon.